I think this is great. I think we're at a stage where it is now 12:35, and
Yep.
so it is 12:35. We're going to get going. Welcome back to everyone, and it's amazing. I still see a really great crowd here. So I'm really excited to introduce this section. We're going through, we're going to talk about cloud, and what makes me super excited about this is breaking down the complexities. We recently, one of the great things I have in my job is I get to talk to lots and lots of customers and lots of prospects and just people who are engaging with us. And when we ask them, especially in the FSI space, what are you focusing on in 2023 or having challenges with? Cloud was the constant across. So this is a great timely session and being delivered by one of the best it's so funny. I'm just used to calling you
just Avi.
You're just Avi. You're like Madonna
yes.
for me. It's so fun. Like you have a last name, it's Avi. But Avi is amazing. He's come from FSIs as well. So not only is he our CISO, but he is a true practitioner, and that's where we're really lucky to have him. So I'm going to stop talking. But again, just a reminder, questions in the side panel. We're going to get them and chit chat with you and just make this really enjoyable. And let's just burst into cloud security. Exciting.
Yes. And again, I do like to keep my presentations interactive, so feel free to jump in with questions, even thoughts or comments. I'd love to get those. At any rate, as Melissa introduced, thank you, Melissa. I am the CISO with SafeBreach, so I'm a practitioner. I'm dealing with some of the same issues that you are no doubt dealing with. And this presentation is going to be talking about really dealing with cloud security. So first, welcome back to Return of Security by Obscurity. One of my favorite introductions into cloud security, right? It's really, as we look at the adoption of cloud security or cloud, really, we see that quite a few organizations are really adopting the cloud, the public cloud. And throughout this presentation, I'm actually going to use a study by Flexera. There is a link to the report that we will provide you if you want to download it yourself. It just is a very good, very deep study of cloud adoption, the different challenges, etc. Now, as you can see, the study that they did included about 753 companies. Not about, that's a number that they specify. And we can actually see that Azure has actually overtaken AWS as far as the cloud, the primary cloud provider. And from the respondents, if you look at the study, about 20% were FSIs. So it is somewhat relevant to this presentation. So one of the first thing I want to do is, and by the way, I am going to assume a certain level of understanding. If you don't know all of the terminology that I am using, please let me know in the background. I'll be happy to catch you up. But I do want to try, so we only have 30 minutes. I want to try and give Melissa back at least 5 minutes so she can catch up. So if there's a term you don't understand, please let us know in the background and we'll make sure you're caught up. So with that, let me go on to our first poll. And as I said, I'm going to try and get this to be interactive. So I'm going to activate this poll now, and you should be able to see polls on the other side of other panel. I'm going to publish it now, and go ahead and select. I think you can do more than one selection. So we'll see some of the results coming up. So far, only one vote. Okay, 6. I'm going to let it run for a little bit before moving on. So far it's interesting. I mean, we're seeing that people are really, or the folks that have voted so far are at least on the cloud somehow. It's not, no one here seems to be just planning on using it. That's great. Okay, I'm gonna move on to our next poll, which is which cloud provider is your primary CSP, your cloud service provider. I'm gonna publish this one. And by the way, one of the reasons I'm doing this poll is not just for the sake of doing a poll, but really also gathering feedback so we can provide that feedback to our product group and make sure that if you are primarily working on AWS or Azure or GCP or possibly you have another cloud, that we know to make sure that we account for it, right? So I do want to use this feedback really actively. So, okay, I see someone has another type of cloud, and I'd be happy to relay that back. Whoever voted for it, if you feel comfortable, it is anonymous. So if you want to share what kind of cloud you're using or CSP, that'll be great, because we want to make sure, again, as we look at cloud security, there's two portions to it. To really be effective with cloud security, we really need to do both the data plane and the control plane, right? And so knowing what cloud vendor you're using is very important for the control plane portion of the security. Okay, so far we have 5 votes, and it kind of tracks for the most part with the study from Flexera. Okay, great. I'll move on. So in terms of cloud adoption, we also need to look at, what does that mean, right? We have two things we need to consider. There's the workloads and there's the data. And within the data, there's obviously basically workloads. Within the data, we have sensitive data and non-sensitive data. So for this one, I won't really stop to do a poll, but it's interesting to see that more than 50% of the enterprises, and obviously think for yourself in terms of, do you have data and workloads within the cloud, or you don't, right? And what kind of data do you have? Internal company data or consumer data? Do you have sales orders, things like that? So next, let's talk about containers. I mean, we most of you should know what a container is, and you may be using it. So let me turn on the next poll, which is what container do you use? So give you time to vote. Great, I see AWS, CCS, AKS, and Kubernetes. So interesting so far in terms of the vote. We've seen some folks are using Azure, and I don't see the AKS vote going up, but we do see Kubernetes and EKS. So that's good. That's good feedback. It's also important as feedback to our support, or not support, our content group. When they look through attacks, it helps us prioritize for our customers which attacks make the most difference to our customers. Good. So I see some. It looks like we've lost some voters. We went from I don't know, about 14 votes earlier to down to 3, which is okay. Obviously, again, it is interactive. Plus, you don't actually have to use containers. So with that, I'll move on. In terms of challenges, I mean, we see that the top 3 challenges are really around security. It actually is slowly moving up compared to previous years. The nice thing about the Flexera study, it'll actually show you the trends year over year. I just wanted to focus on the latest, the 2022 study. So we see that security is a top challenge for enterprises. Lack of expertise and knowledge is next to it, because it extends beyond just lack of expertise and knowledge with the cloud technology. It also extends into how do you do security. It's not as simple as it used to be, if you can say it was ever simple. And again, I do encourage you, if you have any questions or any comments, I'd love to get them throughout the presentation, not just at the end. So now, in terms of top cloud security concerns, I don't like to use a lot of charts in my demonstration, or my presentations, but this is a good example of what folks see as the biggest security threats in public clouds, and what are the top concerns. So you see, it is kind of interesting that the threats and the concerns are somewhat different, right? The threats are more about the actual way that attackers may take advantage of of your cloud infrastructure. But then the security concerns really revolve around data loss and data privacy. So it's not the same as just your traditional in-house, let's say, deployment, the endpoints, servers, etc. So really, in cloud security controls, outside of the native CSP controls, we look at three main categories. We have the CSPMs. A big vendor in that is Wiz, looking at really the configuration, telling you about any type of violation or risky configuration items, allowing you to really take care of them and prevent those from actually impacting your cloud environment. Our CWPP are really, can think of them as your traditional endpoint controls, just applied to workloads in the cloud, right? So you have your AV, your security groups, etc., even network firewalls. And then, this is a little bit of an older control, which is the CASB, that used to be the way to manage your access to, or the authentication and access to cloud applications. Now, CASBs used to be really focused on SaaS applications, but what we're seeing right now is that they are moving more and more towards the other two categories as well, so they don't lose their relevancy to this discussion. So next poll, and this is the last poll, I promise, I think it's the last poll, is the, what cloud controls do you currently use? So I'm gonna turn this on. And again, I do hope that it allows you to do more than one choice. Melissa, you're on mute. I see you talking. You're still on mute. The actual thing is muted.
Can you hear me now? Because it's not on mute. It
Not,
wasn't on mute. It was literally not on mute. It's anyway.
Oh, okay.
Regardless, technical issues. We do have two questions in here. So, and you may get to it later in the presentation, but one is, how does SafeBreach's test coverage compare to someone's like the Wiz? It's funny, like Wiz or Paco or other types of audit frameworks. And then the other, so that's the first question. Then there's another one of, what sort of new attack types would you like to see in BAS specific to cloud control specific assessments? So two great questions in there. So.
Yeah, perfect. So, and I will be covering those through the call, but one thing that I want to make clear is that we don't replace any of these tools. We work in complementing those tools. So, and this is an actual slide in the thing. So as we say in presentation circles, that's a perfect question because I have a slide that addresses that. So really the main thing is SafeBreach helps you test not just the data plane, which is kind of the obvious thing, right? If you have a workload, there's no reason that you can't create an EC2 or any virtual machine in that cloud and just put our simulator on it. But what we also do, because some attack methods now involve actually attacking the control plane or bursting out from the data plane up to the control plane, and then starting to do some lateral movement throughout the account. We are, what SafeBreach does allow you to do is actually test those and allow you to validate those controls that you get through the CSPM and obviously the CWPP. So I hope that answers the question. And then in terms of attacks, we are enabling attacks that will allow you to view this. And again, I will show this, another perfect question. It is coming up. So with that, I will move on. Great, and thank you for the folks who voted. Again, I don't know for sure if it allows you to vote more than once, but it looks like we do have CASB, CWPP, obviously, and then some folks, or one person that voted, has a CSPM. And so again, the other thing I wanted to say, typically this talk would be with our product folks as well. We are integrating our platform with these cloud tools. And with Wiz, it's actually going to be probably our first CSPM that we're going to be integrating with. It's already in the pipeline. And the good thing is we're both a customer and Wiz is our customer. So it's probably going to be a good integration. So moving along, as I said, this is a perfect example of a sample kill chain scenario. And again, we allow you already to run these scenarios. You've seen some of the demos earlier, so I'm not going to repeat going through the product, but basically, again, this is an example of how an attack can happen where you exploit the actual workload. You then escape the Docker or the container that you're in, and then you start moving laterally, even possibly going onto an internal environment that's on the same account, and then exfiltrating that data. So I'll pause here and see if there's any other questions.
I don't see any right now at this point, Avi.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going. Great.
Hey, so Avivi, can I have a question?
Yes.
So you mentioned Wiz. So your tool, is it you're talking about some integration with that or what have you? So when we see alerts or flaws, vulnerabilities, or what have you, are you saying then that a SafeBreach would you could run a use case or run a test against it and then automatically remediate those in advance?
Well, we won't. So we won't remediate them. We will allow you to, again, and this is again perfect question. So next slide actually shows you how we can work with Wiz, right? It's vulnerable. Technically there's no compensating control. We can validate though in privilege escalation. We can validate that the privilege can be exploited. If there's lateral movement, we can validate that it's happening. Now we then obviously recommend remediations.
Right. Gotcha.
And obviously every customer has their own controls, and we will not necessarily. As you may know, we have also integrations with SOAR tools that then they can automatically remediate.
Gotcha.
But we ourselves will not remediate it for you.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And we got another question, Avi. How
Sure.
common is the attack on a control plane with the final destination target on a data plane?
It's getting more and more common, right? Right now, in terms of low-hanging fruit, people still are going after the workloads, the data plane. But as attacks get more and more sophisticated, what we are seeing is people moving up to the control plane and then trying to attack other data planes or other environments within that account. And so most of the breaches, the public breaches that we know about, we've seen are really a result of misconfigurations and things like that, which technically you can detect using Wiz or Orca or any other vendor, and then we can help you validate that one, the vulnerability exists, because sometimes, unfortunately, as you may know, you have to prove to the team that controls the actual configuration that there is a vulnerability. And then once they remediate it, you then can test again and make sure that it has been closed. I should say that the way that SafeBreach uses the control plane or does the control plane validation is we actually need an API called that connects with a certain user. So when you do deploy SafeBreach to test your control plane, what you want to do is test it with the various roles that you may have, just so you can make sure you understand what happens if, let's say, for example, just a salesperson connects to the cloud control plane, if for some reason they have access to it. Or what happens when DevOps or an admin connects to the control plane. Obviously, they'll have different permissions, and as a result, potentially different outcomes. So what we allow you to do, in the same sense as the impersonated user on our regular, let's call them regular attacks, you can do an impersonated user on the control plane.
So we have a couple of follow-ups here, and hopefully
Sure.
we're not derailing. I know we have about 4 minutes left, but are all the major this is better, right? Like a little interactivity. I love it. Are all the major cloud providers doing anything to prevent this, considering this is a common possibility?
We're seeing more and more work. So more and more cloud providers are including that in their native, as part of their native tools. Just as a quick example, AWS has both the Security Hub and Config that allow you to not even have to deal with things like tools like Wiz or Orca, and we are working to actually integrate with those as well, right? So we're working on GuardDuty and CloudTrail right now, and we'll be looking to also add findings from Security Hub and Config. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. And then there was just another follow-up going back to Wiz. So with Wiz, would you think of it more as vulnerability identification and SafeBreach as vulnerability validation and detection visibility gap analysis? How would we think?
Correct. I think, the way I look at it is the CSPM tools right now in their current state, they're really more of a vulnerability assessment and detection. And we are currently and for the foreseeable future will be in the security control validation. So we're just extending that validation to cloud security and cloud security controls. Okay. Any other questions or follow-ups?
I think that's all I see right now. So we'll take this to the end. This is great.
So summary, there you go.
It's amazing. I set you up, Bobby.
So yes, thank you for the setup. So again, cloud and containers are already mainstream, and based on the polls we had, we see that certainly is applicable to you. We see that more and more folks do share or store and process business critical data and sensitive data in the cloud. Security is a top cloud challenge, and we're coming up to make sure that we enable you, our customers, to validate your security controls. We're trying to take that obscurity out of the equation. Data loss and confidentiality, the privacy, all of the public breaches have really been around data leakage and data loss. The way most of these breaches occur right now are really through misconfiguration, which tools like CSPM can help you address. But obviously, when you're dealing with the endpoint type controls, the actual workload issues, again, we can help you validate those controls to make sure that unauthorized access is not an issue. And then, even though you've deployed controls, the exposure is still very high. And really, that's about it. I do have a couple more slides in terms of how to deploy SafeBreach, but for the cloud. But for that, we can always connect after this event and work through your TAM to make sure that you do this successfully. So with that, I'll open up for any more questions and answers. And over to you, Melissa.
Yeah, we'll have we do have a question and answer session at in about a half hour. We're going to walk through into our next session, which is great. You're going to hear from a customer, but Avi, as usual, thank you. Amazing,
sure.
Really awesome. And this won't be the last you guys are going to hear from Avi, because we have some really fun programs next year, and we're going to be bringing them in.
The other thing, if you want to connect to me via LinkedIn for any follow-ups, the QR code in the bottom will give you my LinkedIn address. So feel free to reach out and connect.
Yeah. If you're not connected, connect with Avi, because he is just a wealth of knowledge. As usual, Avi, thank you. Amazing. And we look forward to seeing everyone on our next session with Raymond James. So really good stuff. Thanks. Stay tuned.
Thanks, everybody.